From millions of copies sold in the 90s to now less than 1,000 active players across the whole genre. This is anti-gravity racing, where fast is one of the main keywords used to describe the genre, and the easiest way to achieve that is by faking it, like a movie where cars are clearly traveling at 50 kph but the footage is sped up with headache-inducing camera shake to make it feel fast. These are still up, by the way. There was one game, however, that made you feel fast by actually going fast. Podracer is also the first AGR to have an upgrade system with an economy, which is funny since the game is so incredibly easy that you'll never need to upgrade. Even though the tracks are wide, they have tall walls with a low polygon count, which combined with a wide field of view make the game feel surprisingly fast. This also makes the upcoming corners harder to see, as you need to pay attention and constantly adjust your vehicle with every passing wall. Fortunately, this is not a problem with the game's responsive and grippy handling that also lets you slide and partially roll, though these don't add much mechanical depth. Still, while the driving feels good enough, the main highlight of this game is its 7 distinct environments. Every track and every part of each track looks and feels different. You're driving so fast through so much. Not only you have objects that move and change after each lap, but also multiple split paths to take, making each lap feel unique. You're racing through a large living world, and not just some closed off virgin ring. This game has outdated graphics, poor audio that is just a loop, and generic soundtrack, and yet it feels incredibly fast and immersive. Playing a sim racer with a wheel makes me feel like I'm playing a video game with a large controller. With Podracer, however, I'm inside and soaring to a different world that I don't even know anything about, and the former isn't even an exaggeration. I especially like this track that drops you to a slower pathway if you fall off the main one, and if you do, you might realize that you're in a race. Still, even as a time attack game, this is enjoyable. For a while. As amazing as Podracer is as a one-time experience, it falls off very quickly the more you play it, because eventually, you're gonna find the fastest paths on each track and know what obstacles to expect. You start noticing how little effect jumps and elevations have on the gameplay, and the driving doesn't have enough depth to carry it. Despite being released 25 years ago, Podracer still offers a thrilling high-speed journey through various unique, ever-changing environments. It's one of the few old AGRs that's still up for sale on modern platforms, and you'll likely get a fun few hours out of it. But anyways, this is a series about anti-gravity racing games, so that's what the rest of the video is about. Released just 1 month before Wipeout, Hi-Octane is another game with an emphasis on diverging paths, and it actually makes you take them by introducing resource management. You have fuel, shield, and rockets, each of which can be recharged by either going through the pits or picking up items scattered throughout the game's 8 tracks. This unique aspect makes the game stand out, but is also pretty much its only strong point. The driving is basic and too slidey for the tracks the game takes place on, and the combat is simplistic with auto-lock weapons. The game is overall rushed and unpolished, with incredibly short view distance and unstable frame rate, which in case of older games also translates into inconsistent game speed. Next up, Hoverrace claims to be the first online multiplayer game, and in that case, it is also likely the first one to die. At least the source code became public, which means you can still play it with your friends. If you have any, that is, as even threatening people with free keys and Dogecoins isn't enough to get them to play games that are more than 10 years old, which is why I'm skipping multiplayer altogether in this series, with one exception later on. What we have left is a simple, mostly 2D time attack game with a fun core gameplay loop and track editor. The vehicles in Hoverrace have little friction with the ground and only thrust forward, requiring you to nearly pull a 180 in order to take corners. Or you can bounce off walls at the right angle to maintain more speed, a tactic that for once doesn't feel like a cheap low-risk exploit. Next, we have a free PC game, and probably one of the first to have proper mouse steering, which in this case is actually faster than keyboard since steering hard slows you down. Conventional mouse steering works by tying the wheel's rotation to mouse's position. But this has one huge problem: there is no recentering, and to this date, no popular game or remapping tool has a solution for this, which leads me to believe that literally no one takes mouse steering seriously, despite the comment section telling me otherwise. In this game, the wheel is always centered when the mouse is not moving. To steer, you need to smoothly and continuously move the mouse to either direction, and there you go, problem solved 25 years ago. You better have a large mousepad though. The game itself is an extremely basic floor hugger with only 5 simple tracks. The next game supports racing wheels and is named after an F1 driver. And it looks like this. The ships hug the floor, have a force field around them, and are quite slidey. The game revolves around these magnet walls placed within the physical walls. You have to gently slide and ride these magnets without overdoing it and losing too much speed, and hitting a physical wall will simply destroy your ship. Every track plays out the same, and there is nothing spectacular about the gameplay overall. You can buy upgrades for your ship in the middle of the championship. The higher you position, the more money you make and the more upgrades you can buy. The rich get richer, which makes this the most realistic racing game ever made, and it even has wheel supports. And finally we have AceSpeeder, a game with basic handling and even simpler tracks. Almost all of them can be taken flat out with little attention to steering. It has useless hover sections and jumps that are made pointless by autopilot. And that was every AGR I could find released during the 5th generation of gaming, but I haven't covered all the 2D games yet. One game actually tried to replicate the original F-Zero's success in '94. Here comes Astro, featuring bug-like vehicles? Whatever. The dirt patches, ice, and jump pads are here from F-Zero, but we also have fans that blow your car into the air, death pits that can be toggled, directional boost pads, and conveyors. Sadly, the camera is horizontally locked and too far behind, which likely forced the tracks to have much simpler layouts. They also took the worst part of F-Zero, the collisions, and made it even worse. Some tracks resemble a pinball machine, with walls and objects that bounce your car around with speed, and this is further worsened by the presence of other cars. Sometimes they give you massive speed boosts and sometimes spin you out. Sometimes they blow past the fastest ship in the game, and sometimes they don't pull away when you make a big mistake. Some interesting ideas, but the game eventually failed to capture the awesomeness of its inspiration. F-Zero, on the other hand, went on to have 3 2D sequels in the early 2000s for a portable device, starting with maximum velocity. More like minimum velocity. The ships slide way too much now. To avoid sliding, the game wants you to use a technique called blast turning. You do that by repeatedly tapping the accelerate button when cornering. Blast turning was also the fastest way to take corners in the first game, but it doesn't add anything to it. There's no skill or excitement involved in mashing a single button every time you take a corner. I don't understand why would you take what is essentially a boring exploit and center the whole gameplay around it. This laziness is also apparent in the track design. The layouts are plain generic and it feels like the obstacles were spread across the track randomly. Colliding with AI almost always slows you down, and they are brutally fast now. Until you progress through the game and unlock much faster ships that are basically required if you want to beat the master difficulty. Well, I don't. In fact, no one did, because they removed the master difficulty in the next 2D F-Zero game. Instead, you get a story mode with comic cutscenes featuring 8 characters. So here's the story. The universe is big, but our characters here happen to come across each other a lot, and some of them don't like each other, so they decide to settle all their differences with an F-Zero race. So yeah, it's still mostly a Grand Prix game. But there are some unique story missions where you have to destroy other ships, and even the point-to-point races are very welcome. Their intention was to expand the F-Zero universe and build upon characters. In fact, this game was supposed to tie in with the F-Zero anime series that started casting a month before the game's release. But there's no way I'm gonna sit through 20 hours of weep shit to learn racing game lore, right? Sadly, my intrusive thoughts took over. What an utter waste of time. I'd rather play 20 hours of Firebugs instead, which I will if this video gets 20,000 likes. But man, this is garbage. The plot makes no sense, the story makes no sense, the ending has a Falcon Punch in it, and it still doesn't make sense. It's about a copper and a criminal being frozen and woken up 100 years into the future, all to stop Mr. Evil Batman from Wish from acquiring a Deus Ex Machina device. And they somehow do that with F-Zero machines. And the races somehow tie in all of this because that's how the police force and villains make money. Some characters they really try to expand upon, and some were forced inside because of their appearance in F-Zero X. Still don't care about any of them. We don't control them in the game after all. We control the machines, so let the hover cars do the talking. And they somehow managed to come up with the worst possible explanation for how F-Zero machines work. Even by sci-fi standards, the whole world doesn't make any sense. This was the first, and will be the last anime I'll ever watch. Giving world race and acceleraces any day. Let's get back to the actual game, which unlike the cartoon, is actually good. It's more like the original F-Zero with some X mechanics thrown in the mix. The health boost system is here and you can tune your ship's power band. There are a lot more ships to choose from this time around, and they feel more or less distinct. Some are slidey, some are grippy, and the others are boats. The ships now have a side attack, and just like in X, it's more useful in handling than actual combat. The tracks are much better than the previous game, and there's a lot more variety overall. Even when it's the same layout, the obstacles are sometimes swapped around, and if that's not enough, you can add more tracks through a card extension. The Grand Prix mode is still here and separate from the story mode, and it is what you expect, with the same scoring as X. These championships are relatively easy, even on the hardest difficulty. If you want a challenge, you could try the newly added Zero tests, which consist mostly of time attacks that are limited to certain track sections, but there are some unique challenges as well, and some are very difficult to get gold medal on. Despite using fake 3D, F-Zero GP Legend is a solid game full of content and did not disappoint like its prequel. But here comes... F-Zero Climax got rid of the useless story mode in favor of survival mode and a track editor. The handling has changed a bit, but I'm not sure if it's better overall. The side attacks have been rightfully nerfed and blast turning now comes at a significant speed loss. Except for low grip vehicles for some reason. You can now turn sharper by holding down on the D-pad to enter a slide. Yep, they finally added a proper way to take low speed corners without resorting to wall bouncing. Instead, you can try Arab drifting, which actually gives you free speed. This time, the camera is horizontally locked to the ship's trajectory instead of its facing direction, with vehicle sprites changing to better represent the slide angle. Doesn't really work that well, but is an attempt to replicate a 3D chase camera like seen in most racing games. After finishing a Grand Prix, you'll unlock the Survival mode, which is a series of random driving missions, and these are just as fun as the unique missions in the previous game's story mode. Zero tests also make a return, but the highlight of this game is a track editor. It's very easy to use, but also doesn't offer much complexity. You can only choose between a fair but limited amount of pre-made track pieces and put them on a square grid. This time, however, there's an option to share them between two consoles or even write it down as a password. Sadly, the game was never released outside of China, so the little potential it had went to waste. Overall, GP Legend and Climax turned out to be surprisingly fun despite being 2D. There's so much content here for a handheld device. These two games are definitely slept on, and I blame it on the clickbait articles and videos listing Minimum Velocity as one of the best Game Boy racing games, and every one of them has fucking Mario Kart at the top. I bet the people writing these haven't even touched a Game Boy in their lives, and nor have I, so let me buy one real quick. Who thought having borders would be a good idea? Doesn't matter. A phone loaded with emulators and a gamepad mount is all you need nowadays. Climax even lowered the lap count from 5 to 3 to better suit portable gaming, but no. 3 laps just doesn't feel right for an F-Zero race even on a small screen. And they removed the free race mode. Why? In the end, Climax changed up a few things from the previous game, but I wouldn't call it an improvement. It was just more F-Zero, which is something that we never got after this game. But I still haven't covered the 3D F-Zero gigs that came between GP Legend and Moderate Velocity, so keep an eye out for it in the next episode. If it's released, you can find it on the screen or in the description. It's gonna trigger a lot of people.